Okay, so what does make the Premier League? If you had to, let's just chuck out reasons why the Premier League.
The one thing that you haven't mentioned, I think, well, you did a little bit, but I think it's just the way English football is. I remember when I moved here in this country like 18 years ago and started playing. So there's some mates that I met playing football, and we played in this like Sunday afternoon league. And the first game, like I could not catch my breath after 5 minutes, Gab. I promise you, it was literally box to box. Everybody was running. The intensity for a Sunday, it was a good level, but it was still a Sunday afternoon level, nothing like fancy or anything. Right. They were all smoking, all drinking before and after the game, and yet they could not stop running. And I was like, wow, okay, this is English football. And I think a lot of what has made the Premier League so good, even if there's less and less English players in the league or British players, is still that the culture and the idea of English football is very much the intensity, very much the rhythm of the game, where it's so entertaining because it's not too tactical, it's not too defensive, it's very much like when I started playing here, and I was amazed how amazing it was, and like I thought, okay, I need to up my fitness here because I've never been able to play well in this country.
There's definitely a big element of that, and that's very attractive on television and in person at the stadiums. Gianluca Vialli used to say that it's amazing you have all these foreign players, foreign coaches, but when they come here, they adopt that style, that ethos of the intensity of the games. And you can go and there's ways to measure this. I don't think games in the Bundesliga are necessarily, that much less intense than they are here. But it all just feels so intense, also because of the presentation, the way the fans are so close to the ground.
The atmosphere has played a big part,
The atmosphere. And, we can often go, and people are old school and say, the atmosphere a lot of games is also the flip side, is it's quite corporate and whatever when you're there. I mean, I'm going to sound old, but the atmosphere for me at the Emirates or Stamford Bridge, which are the two grounds I go to the most, isn't what it was. Yeah. But equally, on television, it still looks great.
Yeah.
And you attract a different sort of fan who's now used to it. So I think that is a big factor. One other huge factor, which other leagues don't have, is the risk of getting political or talking about, is that basically in the 1980s, this country deregulated a whole bunch of things, and they became much more attractive to foreign investors.
Yeah.
So, you had Roman Abramovich and you had the Abu Dhabi folks taking over City. That injected a huge amount of capital into the game and also made it easier for foreign owners to come in. And it's not like the foreign owners are better, smarter, or, except for Todd Bowley, of course. But they bring more capital into it. They bring different kinds of expertise. There's a whole comparison of ideas. It just feels much more global.
Yeah, and when we talked about Todd Bowley and that famous conference and everything, we made a good point as well in how much the Premier League had learned from other sports and other league already. That's what also made them so successful, is that at times, I remember the beginning of the Premier League 30 years ago, they tried the pom-pom girls like you have.
I was going to bring that, the cheerleaders,
cheerleaders or whatever.
They're like, no, we don't want this.
Yeah, and then they tried a bit, okay, that doesn't work, let's move on to something else. But when you try, and the things that work, you see their work, you make them better, and you build them even better, and this is where we are now 30 years later. And I think they're very clever the way they did that.
And I think there's just a general openness to... It's weird because in some ways it's an island and it's insular and our game and all this stuff. But equally, it's not just the foreign owners. It's the foreign or the foreign players. Every league has a ton of foreign players, right?
Yeah.
It's the foreign coaches who bring a whole range of ideas, force the English coaches to up their game in a way that, for example, doesn't happen in Italy. We have foreign coaches in Italy too, but then, now we've got younger ones coming through. But for a long time, people just cycled through the same old names.
They
didn't really. They weren't challenged. They didn't kick it up enough. Foreign executives as well at football clubs. They were all over. I mean, I know it's kind of boring when we talk about chief executives and whatever, but the amount of women, the amount of people who are not British, is far higher than you would find in Germany, in Italy, in Spain, and I'm guessing in France as well.
Yeah, completely.
So I think that was another huge driver. Two obvious advantages that they have is language.
Yeah, as you said in the piece, the English, of course,
And I think a corollary to that is also the history. I mean, ultimately, the game was invented on this island. Yeah, I know. I'm not going to get into whether it was Scots or English who invented it, because I know that's a sore spot. But it still was invented here on this island. You've got the history. You've got the legacy.
Yeah.
Every country has historic clubs, but here they do history and pageantry very, very well.
Very well. They know how to do that.
And I think one other big factor is, last time on the show we talked about all the chaos at the FA in France and whatever. I know in Italy when they have league meetings, they fight, they immediately get the press. We've had league meetings where some owners were like recording during the league meetings and then leaking it into the media. Stuff like this happen all the time, right? Here in England, and Richard Scudamore, I like some of the things he did. I don't like some of the things he did, right? But he was in charge for 15 years. The league always spoke with one voice, which is pretty amazing when you've got billionaire sheikhs and Russian oligarchs and American private equity alpha males in the room. I don't know if inside the room they're all at each other's throats, but when they left the room, only Scudamore spoke.
But I don't think you can grow the way they grew without all being on the same page, or maybe not every single club, but certainly a lot of them must have been, that togetherness otherwise you don't grow as well as they do.
Think of the contrast. I'm just going to mention 3 things that happened in the next 3 leagues: Spain, Italy, and Germany, that did not happen here, which I think are really, really relevant. Right? In Germany, a few years ago, it emerged we had a scandal where the national broadcaster was essentially paying Bayern extra money without telling the other club, so that Bayern could stay in the league, right? So Bayern could, we'll sign this contract, but then you give us this extra, right? Essentially a slush run, right?
Yeah.
In Italy, you had the president of the biggest club in Italy, in addition to being the guy who drives the Super League, Andrea Agnelli, coming out and saying that Serie A is like a ball and chain for us, we're much bigger. It doesn't work to try to elevate the league, right? In Spain, obviously, you've got Tebas, who I think generally has done a very good job with La Liga. At continuous loggerheads with Real Madrid and Barcelona, not just over the Super League, but over everything, right? The CVC deal, whatever. So here in England, you don't have that. And you would have reason to do it, right? People have reasons to complain. I mean, if I was a Glazer, we depict the Glazers as like money-grubbing monsters, right? Shouldn't Joe Glazer go? If Joe Glazer were in Italy, or if he were Italian, he would have gone in and he would have said, "Screw all of you! I'm sorry, Brentford, Fulham. Are you kidding? Manchester United generate all the money. I need a guaranteed bigger slice of the pie." That's what he would have done.
Yeah, I mean,
and he would have gone on television. He would have gone outside, and he would have lobbied hard for it. Right?
Remember?
That doesn't happen here.
Well, maybe not to that point, but remember the first lockdown. There was the United and Liverpool especially. So I think there must be tensions at times, of course, and the smaller, the bigger clubs.
But that was post Scudamore, by the way.
Yeah, it was.
That was after Scudamore.
Right,
Scudamore before. I don't know how he did it. I don't know if he's like the.
He seemed to keep everybody happy. That's true.
He's got this capacity to talk to billionaires and big egos and keep them all in line.
Yeah.
So I think when we talk about I said this because we didn't want to spend the whole time talking about some international game that everybody's forgotten already. But I think it's good to celebrate 30 years of the Premier League. It really is one of the great success stories. It's far from perfect. We criticize it all the time.
Yeah, of course.
We'll probably criticize it in a few minutes.
Yeah.
But what they've done so well, and I think there's some things other leagues can learn. There's other things that, can't be replicated elsewhere. And so you have to find your own path to success and to sustainability.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN+.